London is a difficult place to develop. With all of the instability in the US, the UK is now seen as a much more stable place.
A lot of private developers went, wait, hold on, we want to do that.
They can't afford to buy in the city that they are effectively running. I'm Paul Rickard, Chief Executive of Pocket Living.
Paul, thank you so much for joining us at this UKREiiF special. We've got a bit of background noise, so apologies to the listeners for that, but this is all part of being at an event. And John, I'd like to hand over to you to ask the first question.
Great to see you, Paul. I guess we talked to a lot of different people, and it's really interesting to see your journey. And I noticed that you've moved from being a CFO to CEO. And I think I'm interested in how that sort of finance background has enabled you to develop your kind of skill set and your approach, and how to deal with the current challenges in viability that we're all facing in the industry.
There's a lot of them. And I do think that in some ways, right place, right time. The current environment, you do need a properly risk-balanced approach. And so with a finance background, I think it's helpful to be able to bridge together the kind of entrepreneurial drive that you need within an SME space with a structured approach to risk-taking. So my role in part is to bridge the two. So you've got a land team that obviously always want to be gung-ho, entrepreneurial, do transactions. You'll have other people that are a bit more cautious, and by bringing them in the middle, I'm able to combine two things, which is the kind of gut feel that you build up through 25 years in real estate with understanding the numbers and the analysis. And when every scheme's challenge can always be boiled down to either politics or economics, at least understanding half of that equation properly is very helpful, and also gives a lot of comfort to our investors, whether it's our direct investors related, or whether that's funders or other stakeholders. Knowing that you do have a firm control over the financials, over the risks, I think goes a long way to reassuring people in a world where you've got 4,000 construction insolvencies a year. They're all SMEs. So what do you want at the helm? You need somebody that understands those risks, understands the numbers, and is going to be there when the market starts to turn.
And talking of politics, your investors are American, I think that's right.
That's right.
I suppose everybody's got kind of crazy politics at the moment, but what do they make of the UK sort of built environment sector and policies around that? Are they encouraged by what Labour has said? Are they aghast at the fact that we've got a very complicated legislative environment? What is their take?
Gosh, where do you start? Because you've got the sort of a macro level when you take into account the current geopolitics. Actually, the UK is an attractive place. With all of the instability in the US, the UK is now seen as a much more stable place. We have a good rule of law, we have a reasonably sensible government, and whilst the returns are slightly less than you would normally get in the US, just on a like-for-like basis, that trade-off is absolutely worthwhile. So the UK is becoming a more attractive place to US investors. In terms of other aspects, I think the challenge with North America in particular is compare and contrast the two systems. When it comes to housing, and especially affordable housing, they're fundamentally different. So the US is predicated on a tax credit system, ours is not. The politics and the role that private companies can play in politics is very different in the US. So your ability to influence politics, outcomes, subsidies, tax, either at the state level, the federal level, in the US is not comparable to the UK. So are there regulatory challenges here? Yes, of course they are, and they understand that, but they are also grateful for the, as I say, relatively stable political system that we have, and I think that's something that's come back over the last few years after some rather turbulent times after the Trust mini budget.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I think, just in terms of bringing together your different background experiences, I noticed you worked at One Housing Group, and they're a kind of traditional RP, registered landlord model, and Pocket's a bit different, isn't it? And I just wondered what the difference between those two models are, and if you could explain them.
Sure. I think to say a bit different is probably understating it slightly, John. To an extent, it's chalk and cheese. But one of the reasons I wanted to go to Pocket was because it was straddling both sectors. The affordable piece, we deliver affordable homes, but also being a private organisation to give me that extra exposure and experience. I think the biggest difference is the financial stability and the regulation. So the HA's huge asset base, access to finance that's relatively easy. You've still got to negotiate and get the best terms that you want, but it is available because you're a high credit organisation in a zero default sector. In 100 years, no one's ever lost money in the housing association space. Go to an SME developer, whether it's Pocket or anybody else, you can't just call up a bank and say, I want to do a £250 million bond today. I want to do a £90 million private placement. No, you're watching the cash flow on a weekly basis. It's the old adage, isn't it, that cash is king, and no more so is that the case than at an SME developer. Throw on top of that, though, you're both grappling with a lot of regulatory challenges, safety, fire, and so on. But on top of that, the RP have also got their regulations. That's not just the regulator of social housing. They've also got the CQC, lots of other things. So the challenges are very different. I wouldn't like to say one is more challenging than the other, but on the whole, I would say the SMEs are absolutely at the sharp end of the wedge when it comes to development and funding. And that's why we're going bust, as I say, 4,000 a year, never been a default in the HA space.
Can I ask a question about planning? We work for private developers and we also work for housing associations. I can tell you that planning applications, when you're offering 100% social rented homes at the end of it, those planning applications feel a little bit easier as designers. You get a bit of a smoother ride, right? Because everything's got to be put into the balance. How do Pocket fare? Because I remember when you kind of first came on the scene, the model, I think other people would struggle to get through. It's 100% studios, or that certainly was the original model. And I think a lot of private developers went, "Wait, hold on, we want to do that." How have you been able to kind of make planners comfortable with what you're offering? And do you think you get an easier ride as if it was 100% social rented?
So first, it's not studios. It's well-designed one-beds. Important distinction. Our homes are 38 square metres.
38 square metres. So in the London plan, that would be defined as a one-person, one bed. Yeah. But
as you know, over the last 20 years, we refined that design so they feel like normal one-beds.
Yeah.
High floor to ceiling, 255 metre, etc. But you're right in that our product is not. It's not really a compliant product in terms of we will deliver 100% first-time buyer, key worker, discounted homes. So there's no 2 beds in there, there's no 3 beds, there's no social rent. So it's really important that we work with the right partners that understand what we're trying to do and they buy into our mission. So our mission is to house those city makers. It's the people that without them there is no city, it doesn't exist, and yet they can't afford to buy in the city that they are effectively running. And that's what sits at the heart of Pocket. Now, if a local authority buys into that, which at its very simplest is to say, do you want your nurses, your teachers, your police officers, your firefighters to be able to get onto the housing ladder? If you do, this is the answer. And if local authorities buy into that and buy into the fact that Pocket is not trying to solve the housing crisis, we're trying to solve a very small slither of it. Which is why you'll see us going back to the same boroughs again and again. So Waltham Forest, for example, about 30% of all of our schemes have been in Waltham Forest.
Because they get it.
Because they get it.
And are you taking people from a housing list? Is there there's some validation criteria, isn't there, for those that are eligible to buy those homes?
That's right. So we sell the homes at a 20% discount, but you do need to qualify, which means you need to earn below the mayor's income threshold, not own an existing home, and live or work in the borough.
And then you also, I think you can't sell it on, you can't take a profit at the open market rate. Is that right? Is there some sort of way of controlling
the sell? Yeah. So when you want to sell up, it becomes a market-facing product, factoring in the restrictions within the lease. So it does stay affordable in perpetuity. That's the beauty of the model, and that's why it is an affordable offer. So when you sell, they need to meet the same criteria you met, and Pocket administers that. So we have to sign a certificate saying, yes, this is correct, so that we never see those homes lose the affordable housing characteristics they've got.
One final question, sorry John, before it's just that I love the innovation around, like, as architects we get to see a lot of schemes, but you do find yourself designing, whether it's for social housing or private, kind of the same scheme over and over again, right? Because the London plan is reasonably prescriptive. You guys have looked at the problem and gone, hold on, let's think about it in a totally different way and unlock, and solve this, as you say, like a subsector of the problem gets solved by this product. Why is there not more innovation in people coming up with solutions like this? I mean, and also, where did Mark Flessing get the idea from that this would work? And how did he convince anybody that it was like a thing that they could back in the first instance?
So there's quite a lot there.
Sorry. And then that's the end of the questions. After that, I'm going to chill out and John can ask something.
So let's pick up the innovation point first. I think there's two reasons why this isn't happening on a wider scale. And to be clear, the demand for this is 1.5 million people in London alone. Yeah. We want people to be doing what we're doing. We want the competition, because it can only be a good thing for residents. I think there's two main reasons why it doesn't happen. The first is it's just darned hard work. It's working with partners, convincing people of the validity of the model and the benefit that it brings to community, and the way that we bring people together to create new communities. You've got to buy into that. And we do sell at a 20% discount, which means it's not a high margin product, and it's not intended to be. It's intended to solve a problem. But secondly, is over time the ability for bodies like Homes England and the GLA to support innovation has diminished. So the real sort of jump point for Pocket was in 2013. As you say, the company was founded by Mark Flessing and Paul Rickard 20 years ago. But up until 2013, it was a relatively small affair. One scheme here, one scheme there. In 2013, got the first funding from the GLA through the Mayor's Housing Innovation Fund, which was 25 million to deploy into this new housing product. That doesn't exist today. So if we put the same offer to the GLA or Homes England, they wouldn't be able to support it. Yeah. So one of the things we've been arguing for is the importance of funding flexibilities for the GLA and Homes England, and that's just as important as the quantum of funding available as well, because the GLA, Homes England, they all want to be delivering homes, they all want innovation, and yet we come up against those blocks where they just don't have the agency or flexibility to be able to move quickly with new innovations like Pocket. So we're hoping the spending review will address that in a few weeks' time.
That's exciting. I think it's interesting about that, because obviously in London, and we've been talking about this a lot, you've got the new GLA policies around co-living, which is obviously a different product to yours, but there are probably comparisons made sometimes. And I think what in your units, there's a concern sometimes that they're very small, these new products. What in your units distinguish them, and what do you think about that as a comparison to, say, some of the co-living schemes?
I think they are chalk and cheese. I mean, the only thing I can say is come and see a Pocket home. Even people that are huge fans of it and get it are still impressed when they walk through. We've spent 20 years making sure this doesn't feel like a compact home. Whenever you take someone around, the first thing they'll say is, is this one of the compact ones? Is this one of the small ones? Like, yeah, it is. And they're like, are you sure? And they think I'm trying to trick them. Because over 20 years, we've just finessed the design. So I've already talked about the ceiling heights, things like the floor-to-ceiling windows, little space-saving tips. When you walk into the home, there's quite a large circulation space, which is almost counterintuitive, because you think, well, if it's compact, why would you waste space on corridors? Wouldn't you rather have it in the hub rooms? But by walking into that space, you're walking into a home rather than into a little corridor that you've got to get through to get to your home. So I challenge anyone to come and look at a Pocket home, and I'm happy to show anyone around and tell me it feels small. I can guarantee it's a darn sight nicer than my first home, and I suspect a darn sight nicer than many other people's first flats as well.
Yeah, and double the size of a co-living. Co-living's at 18 to 20, they're 30, 37, 38. So
yes, but you don't tend to have shared amenity and stuff like in the same way.
We do have shared amenities, so there'll be roof terraces in every building. Depending on the scale of the development, there'll also be other interstitial spaces, whether that's yoga studios, other terraces, co-working. So it's not an amenitized building, as in a BTR, but we do provide that space. And what you've got to bear in mind is we are genuinely creating communities here. The people that buy our homes have a lot in common. They're a very similar demographic, very similar stages of life. So they come in, and from day one they already know their neighbours because we've already introduced them. We've hosted pre-move-in events. So you go in and you know you're living next door to Dave and opposite Fiona. You've already got your WhatsApp going. Within your first week, you'll be organising parties on the roof terrace. So one of our recent
and also,
schemes,
I think with co-living, the model, it will inevitably be a bit more transient. Like if you buy a property from Pocket, you're going to be way more invested in meeting your neighbours than you are co-living. The minimum stays a month, you know. So
no, I think it's just interesting to discuss about the different types of models and like where are we ending up. London, there is clearly a challenge in affordability. This is one solution. The co-living is another. There is other affordable products, etc. But I think we need innovation, right? It's not that this is a great model, but like genuinely, me as an architect, I think we need a bit. It's difficult.
I wish there were more. I wish there were other
so
people doing. Okay, I'm only going to do 2 beds, or find a model, make it non-compliant, but in a cool way. Give back more stuff to the local authority. Like, otherwise it's just the same old, but with slightly different tenures.
Well, that's right, and we've seen that, haven't we, over the last 10, 15, 20 years. It would be for sale or PRS.
Yeah.
But then over time, we're filling the gaps between those bookends of living options, and I hope that more will come. I mean, Pocket's next stage of our journey is moving into the rental space.
Yeah.
And that's not vanilla BTR, it's a variation on rent that serves the same demographic, because when the company was started 20 years ago, people couldn't get on the housing ladder, and that was the issue. That has not gone away.
Yeah.
We've still got 25,000 people on our waiting list, but they've now got the same challenge in rental. You can't get high quality rental
massive
either.
Problem. I mean, I think our staff. I know. When I look at what the rentals they're paying, it's insane. And it was interesting about the different product mix. We had Greystar on. And they're obviously an American-backed fund, and they have a much greater mix in the US, or much greater flexibility, that you can mix what we'd see as a co-living scheme with a residential scheme with an affordable scheme. Whereas in the UK it's quite productized due to the use classes and other restrictions. So I think. Do you think there's some opportunities there in London looking forward where we could innovate more to bring those products together?
Oh, I think absolutely, and I think we agree that innovation is a positive thing. I mean, even within Pocket itself, as we move into the rental, you're starting to cover all stages of people's lives. So I could see a situation where people they rent in a Pocket flat, and maybe there's an incentive there that they then get a discount to move on to Pocket for sale, which is the 1 beds, and then they move on to a Pocket edition, which is a 2 bed. I'd love to cover the whole life cycle. And could those be mixed? Absolutely. And you'll have seen a huge body of research that says actually those sort of mixing the demographics, mixing age, especially with sort of retirement living and young living, for example, benefits everybody. So absolutely full in favour, but as you say, it's difficult. The use class, but also the economics, because you're then managing different assets in different ways, and when the economics are so challenging right now, unfortunately that is going to stifle innovation unless you've got public support from Homes England, GLA or other sources.
So we're at UKREiiF at the moment, and I just thought that's an interesting point with that challenge. How are you finding the vibe? The last time we saw each other was at a BCB event where we had Baroness Sharon Taylor, who is the housing minister for the Lords, and she was talking about trying to some of the innovations or the push that the government's trying to give to get more housing built. Are you seeing that on the ground? How are you finding the vibe here? What do you think is happening in the real world?
So am I seeing it on the ground? No, not yet. I am very supportive of the policy changes and the work the government have put in, and the GLA as well, actually. I've seen it mirrored there. But it takes time for all this to filter through. The question is how long? Is that a year? Is it longer? So I think the vibe I would describe as suppressed optimism. People want to be optimistic.
Yeah.
And we can see the right things being said, and importantly we can see government being more open than they've ever been. They are listening. You can speak to the right people, and if we as a sector, as private partners, have suggestions that are pragmatic, relatively straightforward, make sense and don't cost the Treasury very much money, then they're absolutely open to receiving those. So that does give me encouragement, but we all know building is a long-term game, and it's going to take a little while before we see the actual impact on the ground.
What's your vision for how London, as a sort of London's housing needs to evolve, and what's going to be Pocket's role in building that future?
So London is a difficult place to develop. The GLA is supportive, as are many of the local authorities, but it does mean you've effectively got to go through planning twice on some occasions with the local authority and the GLA. We do need more consistency, we need more pragmatism, we need more focus as well. So instead of trying to make housing solve every problem, well, why don't we just let housing solve the housing problem first and focus on that, and let local authorities also recognise the proportionality of the challenges the SME sector faces. Pocket's role in that, I think, is threefold. We will continue to deliver homes for the citymakers. We will deliver those for sale when we can make the economics work. We will deliver those for rent, and maybe there's a third one that we haven't yet thought of. We'll also be supporting the GLA and our local authority partners to find solutions to their challenges, which Pocket may or may not have a role in, and we'll continue to lobby government for support as well to ensure they're giving those public partners the flexibilities they need to implement the many great ideas that are out there, but at the moment are unfortunately being stifled, but could really start to turn the dial in London.
Amazing. Do you want to end it there?
Yeah, I think that was great, Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
really
much.
exciting.
It was brilliant.
Yeah,
Cheers.
pleasure.
Really,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.